Let's swap it. What's up, everybody? And it's Monday. I'm back. I'm on my job number 2, I guess. A lot of you guys been hitting me up with questions about how-tos, stuff in a garage, what I need for engine swaps or minor repairs up to major repairs. And so I'm pretty lucky to have this job. I had somebody hit me up asking me about if I could help them do a VQ swap, and I thought it would be a perfect opportunity. So to explain kind of the how-tos on taking a VQ engine out the way I do it. It's pretty fast and efficient, and what I use, we'll be going through some of the stuff that I use in my toolbox. It's a big toolbox, but it's kind of filled with normal sockets, just whatever tools, screwdrivers, that type of stuff. So I'm gonna go over stuff like that, stuff that I use, and I'm also gonna try and explain in complete detail on how I'm taking this apart piece by piece to get the engine out, so that way you have a better understanding on what I do. And if you want to try and attempt it at your house, go for it. So I'm gonna get started with pretty much taking off the strut bar and some of the easy stuff. I'll explain and show what's going on, but I'm gonna start with that. That's kind of the stuff that's boring. So I'm gonna start with that, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, before we get started, I'm gonna kind of lay out. I took the hood off. You can see it's over there. It just makes it way easier to access everything, to lean over from this side in or from this side, and then when the engine comes out, you have to raise it pretty high, so it'll make it a lot easier. You don't hit anything in the way. So first thing I do is I take these off. These are a 14. There's 4 of them. You see 3 of them and a nut, and the same on the other side. I'll take this off out of the way first, and then I'll take the 10s off of here, 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 and under there to take this off to kind of expose things. I take off all the accessory stuff, the intake, and then I'll start taking off the front stuff. The headlights will come out. I'll start draining the coolant, and then we'll take the front off. When the front of the car is removed, it's way easier to get around everything, and then it's just unhooking and taking stuff off. But I'll show you that as I get to it. So I'm gonna take off the 14s, I'm gonna take off the accessory stuff, and I will get right back to it. Okay, one thing that occurred to me while doing this, I use a lot of hand tools for breaking stuff loose, but there are a lot of guns like this. It's a 3/8 gun. Mine's a Snap-on. It's a 14-4. It's a little bit older one, but this is a great thing to have. DeWalt makes them, Milwaukee makes them if you don't want to spend the money that Snap-on is, but it's a really good gun to have. I usually use it to get stuff done quickly and efficiently. So I just wanted to point that out. I do use a lot of hand tools. I'll use pliers, I'll use a ratchet if I'm breaking stuff loose in weird spots that I can't put a gun in, but this is one of the tools that I use probably for most bolts in an engine swap if it's accessible. So I just wanted to point that out. It's a good tool to have. You should look into it. 3/8 gun, yeah. Okay, so I got the bar off, I got the cover off. I'm starting to take the intake off. There's a ground, I wanted to point out, a ground on the wiring harness that goes right here, and a ground that goes right here to the block. I'm trying to point out the grounds for you guys because sometimes people will do engine swaps and then they go to try to start it and it doesn't start, and they don't know why. Everything's hooked up except for the grounds, and ground issues are a major issue when it comes to trying to start the car that people overlook. So the other thing, I was starting to pull out the intake, and I wanted to point out this big hose on the underside of the intake. I don't know if people realize that that actually goes to, let me show you on this engine, this breather right here on the back of the driver's side valve cover gasket, or valve cover, not gasket, the valve cover. This actually goes to the intake. So people will wonder why there's a big nipple that comes off of here and where it goes. Some people put like a breather on the back there. It's not smart, just hook it back up. So I'm going to continue removing this, removing a couple other things, and I'll show you how to take out the wiring harness under here and how to put it up on the engine. So I'll get back to you. Okay, and a pro tip, well, not a pro tip, more like common sense, but people don't think you get the picture. Anyway, pro tip, any unused hardware that goes to something, I usually will put it back on what I was using it for. So as far as like the hood goes, these nuts are kind of hard to find with the washer built onto them, so I'll put them on here. I also have a little like container that I'll put stuff. So all this stuff is like the first part of the car or the easiest part or the front part or something like that. I'll have a container that I'll put all the bolts in, and they vary in size, so it's pretty easy to distinguish what you need. And then the other stuff you'll see, I'll put like this one back in here, or I'll put this one back in here. That way I know that that goes there. Sometimes specialty bolts have special threads. They'll have too long of bolts, too short of bolts, stuff that if you just throw it in a bin, you're not gonna know where it goes. So I just thought I would share that with you. Okay, I have the plastic pieces off. I'm gonna start taking off the wiring harness. A lot of people think that they have to go through here and take off each individual coil. They'll have to take off the part that goes to the oil control valves. They'll have to take off this. I do all that when it's out of the car. So what I found, the easiest part is you'll see that the main harness will run through here, come across here, and go down into the cabin, and it's really not that hard to take off. It's literally like 2 or 3 plugs, and so that's what I start with first. Also, when you do this, make sure you take off a battery terminal, take the battery off. I know I got too excited before I did it, so I didn't take it off, but you take this off because the starter down on the transmission, if you go to put a socket on that and it's still live, you're gonna understand why I told you to take it off. So you'll come over here. Is it? Oh, I hope I unlocked it. Yeah. I hate when you have to go around. Okay, GoPro technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on. Sometimes the camera spazzes out, but I needed to grab my light anyway so I can show you where the harness goes. So it'll go down into that hole, and then it will come into under here, and you can see that it comes down and goes right to this black plug, and then there's a white, and then there's also a pigtail that goes behind this cover right here. It's just for a ground, so all you have to do is unplug it. It's not a big deal. But that's pretty much the 3 that will have to come off, and then I can pull this out of here and I just roll it and set it on the engine. And then as far as electrical goes, besides a couple things that I have to do down to the alternator, the starter, yeah, pretty much that. I'll have to take that off and it'll be completely disconnected on the engine from the electrical side. So I'm gonna get started on that and I will show you how to take that off. Okay, so I have this plate off, or the plastic cover for the kick panel on the passenger side, and you can see this is that white plug I was talking about, and it pigtails up to here and it goes to this white plug and to the main ECU. The main ECU one, you just push this clip forward and pull down and then pull away, and that's pretty much all it takes to disassemble it off of the ECU. Blah, I almost got confused with my words. So this same thing, you'll push in here, this will slide forward, and this will pop out. So I'm gonna do that real quick, and then I'll pull the harness out and show you exactly what the plugs look like. Okay, as you can see, so then I pulled this off, and now the harness is just connected to this. Here's the main ECU, that ground I was talking about, and the white plug. So it's pretty much disconnected now from the car. The only part I'm gonna have to take off underneath is the wire harness that goes down under to the transmission. There's about 5 plugs and a couple grounds that we'll have to take off of there. That way I can put it up on the engine, because I just plan on taking the engine out without the transmission. There's no reason really to take the transmission off. So I'm just disconnecting everything from here. I don't even have the car on jack stands yet, and I've gotten pretty far with everything that goes on for removing the top part of the engine. So now the main thing is to take the front of the car off, put it up on jack stands, drain the oil, drain the coolant, and start getting the other intricate stuff underneath. That way I'm gonna be able to pull the engine up and out. So first things first, the bumper, you have these, if they're still all intact. They're not usually all intact, but he has all of them intact. So there's 6 here. And then on this side, underneath in the wheel well, there's a 10 and a 10 probably about right here. And that will loosen the top part. And then underneath, if there's still the under tray on, I haven't even looked at it yet, there'll be bolts that usually go along here, 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 all the way down. So you remove that, and then the bumper will come off, and then underneath you'll have, well, this is the bumper cover, bumper skin, however you want to call it. The actual bumper, the metal bumper, sits right in here, and then there'll be 4 bolts on each side that bolt it to the frame that will take off as well. So I'm going to take that off, and then I'll show you how to take the headlights off and what bolts need to be removed to take off the radiator support. So okay, so now you can see that this is actually the bumper. Yeah, it's actually the bumper. What happened, man? Anyway, these bolts right here are what hold, it's underneath this plastic. But you take these ones off, don't take these ones off. These ones, not these ones. And also those ones. But, so there'll be 4 and 4, and this will come off, and then it'll just be taking out the headlights and some of this other crap. But I'll show you how that goes. Anyway, so here is one of the bolts for the headlight. Then there's this one for the headlight, this one for the headlight, and that one for the headlight. So same on both sides. That's how you take the headlights out. So I'm gonna take off the front bumper and the headlights, and we'll continue from there. All right, so I have the headlights out now of the car. This was another one of those moments that I took the bolts out because I didn't feel like looking for them later, that I put them, you can see, in here and in here, and then the last one I left in there. So I don't know, it works for me. I don't like having a bunch of bolts and screws and crap everywhere that I know that I'm gonna be looking for. Maybe I won't remember, maybe I will, on how they go in. So I'd rather just put them with the component that it came off of. So for me, this is a power steering cooler that I'll take off. I'll kind of move to the side. For me, what I like to do is I will start unbolting here, here, and then there's 2 under here. There's a 12 nut and a 12 bolt that this actually sits into like this. It's the same on both sides, and then this whole front clip will come off after taking those off. So I'm gonna start taking that stuff off. I like taking this off. I'll pull this cable all the way through so that way this can come off. And then I don't like draining the power steering if I don't have to. So I'll take the pump off of here and kind of set it aside. And then I kind of take this whole clip and I'll move it off to the side. So that way I don't have to drain that, because bleeding power steering sucks. It's messy. I don't like doing it. So other thing with the AC, I'll be taking the AC compressor off, and then I'll kind of lift it up and set it on the frame rail on this side, and then that gives me clearance to be able to take the engine out. So I'm gonna get started on taking the bolts off and taking the front off. I actually have to jack the car up now and be able to take the coolant, drain the coolant out of here, which it's full. That's good. This motor, apparently it had developed a rod knock. I think he was out sliding it, and then after he heard the rod knock, he went out and slid it some more. So good job on that, bud. Gave me work. You sent it. Hey, proud of you. Anyway, so that's what happened with this. So I'm gonna start taking this apart, and yeah, we'll keep on going. Okay, so as you can see, we have the radiator out now, and bam! What? I know, it looks like a mess right now, but there's a reason why I've done this. So the AC condenser, you can see the lines, nothing's getting bent. It's actually how it sits down like this. I just took this bracket off. And I kind of have this here until I take off the AC compressor. And then it'll make this freed up where I can actually set this to the side and not have to mess with it. And then I have the whole radiator support and front, I don't know, is it called a fascia, or I don't know, radiator support. Anyway, you can see that I had the power steering still hooked up. I just kind of fed it through there, and it comes from here and then kind of comes up and goes here, still full. When I take the 12 off, then there's a 14 that's right here. I'll take the belt off. So the proper way to take this off is you loosen this 12, you loosen this 12, and then these are your adjusters on the bottom. As you unscrew them, the belt will get loose. Obviously you have to take this one off first because this one's behind it, but then you'll take those off and I will be able to get to this 14 and this 10, and then if I undo this right here, all I have to do is pretty much take this and rotate it and set it up here, and then my power steering will be completely out of the way. It looks like there's a lot going on with the engine, but actually this engine's pretty well designed, and it pretty much stays all within on the engine with minor things that go from the chassis to it. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna take the belts off, kind of move the stuff out of the way, and show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, and we're gonna keep going. Okay, so one of the things that I forgot to mention also while doing this is take a break. Okay, so now you can kind of see what I was talking about. I have had the AC compressor up, pulled out of the way, AC condensers here, still charged. I didn't have to drain it and refill. And I have the power steering is here, up out of the way, still full. I didn't have to drain it and burp the system. So this just makes it a whole lot easier for me to be able to do things in the garage. I don't have to worry about a way of discharging this, since it is illegal in California to just empty it into the atmosphere, and then charging it and stuff while on a car isn't exactly the easiest. So without the proper machine anyway. So now if you can see, you can kind of see around the engine. It's kind of, get this out of the way. Besides this one hose right here, the top stuff is pretty much done. We've disconnected from the battery, we've disconnected the fuel stuff off of here and kind of set it off to the side, and then it's pull this hose out of the way, and then it's time to start taking the bell housing bolts off, the mount bolts, and then I'll climb underneath the car and we'll take off the harness that goes around the transmission, and I'll pull it up through here, set it up here like I have this one, and then it'll be hook the chain up and yank. So yeah, I'm gonna start doing that, and if there's anything that I can really think of that's worth showing, I will, but I'm kind of losing daylight right now, so I'm gonna try and get this done as much as I can, and then I'll set the engine hoist up and I'll show you it come out of the car. Okay, so I wanted to explain something. That's the front of the car. So if you come back to the transmission, you can see the wiring harness part that needs to come off of the transmission. It goes all the way down under here and then around back, and up there is the final one. That's the hardest one to get to. I believe it's a pressure sensor. I don't know, pressure sensor or maybe a level sensor, but as you can see right here, the weight that's off to the side, without taking the transmission down, it's really hard to get your hand in there. So I use a long screwdriver to get to the connector piece and then slide it off. That's the hardest one to get to, but if you take off the rest of the harness that runs along the transmission, it'll run into the two O2 sensor connectors, a blue and green one, and then this one comes over here and it goes to this one right here, which is the crank sensor. And then you can pretty much just pull this all the way up and pull it out the hole that I was talking about. So the only other pigtail is this little one right here that goes to the starter. So I know it's kind of hard to see, it's kind of cramped down here, but I wanted to at least point it out and show you kind of why I take it off of here, leave the transmission in and the exhaust and all that. The only things I'm going to have to take off is the 3 bolts on each collector for the exhaust, and then I'll put a jack probably under this point right here to keep the transmission, or even further up actually, to keep the transmission moving up and down for when I pull the engine out.
it'll make it easier for me to adjust and slide the engine back in when I put the new one in. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. It's something that's pretty easy to do. Once you pull this and pull it out, then it'll be completely disconnected from the transmission, and then you just have to do bell housing bolts and exhaust, and you're done. So I'm gonna land her here and do that and finish this out so I can get this engine out of here.
Okay, I'm at this point. I've finally gotten it to where it's hooked up, the cherry picker's on, I have everything underneath, I have the trans jack set up. So now it's just time to see if it separates. I have all the exhaust done. We'll see what happens. So far, so good. Okay, so that's it. As you can see, the engine's out, everything's done. As far as the removal, here's the new engine. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm gonna have to swap over from that old engine over to here. Usually when yards take these out of cars, they'll just cut wire harnesses, cut hoses, and cut stuff like that that I guess you could use, you could reuse, but to take it off this engine or to get another brand new one, a new hose or something, doesn't really cost that much. And it'll make it, you know, easy and reliable. And I think they really want you to do that anyway. So anyway, that's it for day one of this. I wasn't planning on doing an install. I was more trying to make it easy for people if they wanted to remove it. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath trying to fight that engine myself. As you can see, there's nobody here. Anyway, one-man show. But I was thinking about doing an install video as well. I don't know if y'all would like to see that. If you do, like, comment, subscribe at the bottom. Let me know. Let me know what you thought about this. And I got a new mic. I don't know if you can see on here, but it's kind of like the same one that Mike has. So let me know how the audio is. Let me know if there's any ticking noises, if there's anything that I should clean up. But I don't know. I've listened to some of the playback and it sounded good. So anyway, thank you guys for everything. Thank you for watching. Thanks for the views. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for everything that you guys do. And stay tuned. We'll see you next time.